Welcome to Civil War Digital Digest. I'm Will. Well, we're back at historic Fort Wayne, and members of the 73rd OVI Brass Band have come back to be with us for another episode today. Previously, we talked about the role of the bands in the Civil War, and today, John Connors and his team are here. We're going to introduce you to these really interesting looking instruments. Thanks for being here, John.
It's my pleasure.
So, the Civil War Brass Band looks a lot different than a brass band that we see today in a college marching band or in a parade. Let's meet these instruments. What are we going to meet today?
Sure. Well, the brass band is mainly 5 parts, and with the top being mainly melody and then the bottom being the bass line, and then there's inner voices. So to list them from top to bottom, we have E-flat over-the-shoulder sax horn. Down one, we have a B-flat cornet, bell front. Next, we have an E-flat alto horn, bell going upright. That's a sax horn, just like the E-flat over-the-shoulder sax horn. Next, we have the B-flat tenor sax horn, bell going upright. And then behind me, we have 2 examples of E-flat bass. We have an over-the-shoulder sax horn and an upright bell sax horn. And then we have 2 members of the percussion family of the Civil War Brass Band. It's the bass drum and the field drum, or side drum. You would know it as a snare drum.
Okay, outstanding. Well, let's start there. Let's set the tempo and then move forward. Let's bring our drummers up and tell us about who we're looking at here.
Sure. So we have rope tension drums that are played with flesh heads, and these ropes are pulled tight with leather ears, and that gives it the tension that is needed to really produce that strong military sound. And the side drum has gut snares on the bottom. And do you want to just hit that once real quick? And then the bass drum. And together it sounds like this. Go ahead, gentlemen. Thank you.
So obviously anybody who's marched, whether fifes and drums, brass band, or modern band, is going to recognize that.
Exactly. That's a good representation of a marching cadence that they would play on a parade or just a campaign march when they didn't want anything but just a strong beat to keep the men in step.
Okay, great. Well, let's build the song from the bottom up. We're going to play a song, and there's a reason we'll play it. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Let's hear some beats of it, and let's do that by learning the instrument. Let's start at the bottom. Go ahead and bring us a horn.
All right, so we're going to have Neil Ferdinand come forward. He's playing the E-flat bass sax horn, and this is the over-the-shoulder variety. They have rotary valves. That's the typical valve style of the period. You would maybe recognize this type of valve, which are piston valves. These are Berliner piston valves. Rotary valves are probably the most common, and he's going to play the bass line of this tune to give you an idea of what the bass E-flat bass sounds like. Very good.
Well, thanks, Neil. What instrument that we see in today's marching bands covers this instrument?
So in marching bands, this role would be covered by the sousaphones. If you're going to listen to a march by a concert band, it would be a tuba. They're in the same family. This is a slightly different instrument. They called them tubas, but it's slightly different and kind of fell out of fashion as the tuba gained prominence.
Great. Well, thanks, Neil. Okay, you said we had 2 of the low horns. Who's the other horn?
So we have another upright bell, and this is a bass with an upright bell. So Carter, you want to come forward? So this is an upright bell sax horn, and it's got rotary valves as well. These are side action, meaning he's playing them from the side versus on top, which is how the other one was. Those are the 2 most common styles of rotary valves. And
is this different music, or is this the same song?
Same thing. It's going to just sound a little bit different because the bell is going this way versus over the shoulder. So Carter, why don't you give us a...
Thank you, Carter, for bringing that to us today. So it sounds like if you were missing a percussion section, that steady beat would go ahead and set the bottom line of your music.
Absolutely. It's very, very rhythmic, very steady. It's the pulse, and it's very similar to what the bass drum does in terms of providing the tempo. So moving up then, this is the B-flat tenor horn, tenor sax horn. As I mentioned, this has the Berliner piston valves, very similar to what you see today. and this covers the tenor voice, so just one up from the bass.
Fantastic. And if I were in a band today, what instrument would I be playing to play this?
Most likely the trombone, and this has a trombone-sized bore to it. They also had slightly bigger instruments that played in the same key, baritones, and those were similar to the baritones of today or even the euphoniums, and it's just a bigger sound, but same range.
Well, I know both of us to be trombone men, so that's an instrument we're both very comfortable
right,
with.
yeah.
Let's climb higher than that. Who's next?
All right, next we have the E-flat alto sax horn. So John Lennon is going to come forward and play that for you. So this is probably a European import. These are all original horns, as may have forgotten to mention that. This has the top action rotary valves. Plays similar role to the French horn of the bands today, and sometimes they nickname this the peck horn because of the type of notes that it typically plays, as you will hear in this demonstration.
Thank you, John. Appreciate you bringing that today. Okay, John, you said French horn. I know when I've run into French horns in the Civil War. Tell me about that.
French horns did exist in the time. They were in orchestras more commonly, but some bands that didn't go out in the field, such as the Marine Band and the West Point Band in New York, had French horns. The regimental field bands, you wouldn't have seen French horns. They were not common because they were difficult to play, and they still are a difficult instrument to play.
Absolutely not something we see in a marching band most of the time in today's
usually,
world.
no.
Great. Well, you mentioned a cornet. Let's bring it up and see what we have.
Corey is going to come forward and play the B-flat cornet. This probably looks very similar to cornets that you would see in bands or brass bands today. The bell's going forward when he holds it to play, although these are the side action rotary valves, and that's how the horn is oriented as well, to play those with the side versus the top action piston valves you'd see on a trumpet today. So this provides counter melody, or the top voices sometimes of the harmonic structure.
Well, I think we're getting a small hint of what we're going to be seeing as we get to the top when we hear that melody.
Absolutely.
What instrument covers this today?
The trumpet is primarily what you see, especially in beginning bands. They start on trumpet, and then a lot of college bands typically use the trumpet as their lead soprano voice. So that's kind of not quite up to the soprano range yet. This is covering the harmony or the counter melody.
Okay, great. Thank you, Corey. And we've got one left, I see. What do we have?
So we now have the melody come into play with the E-flat cornet or E-flat sax horn. In this case, it's an E-flat soprano sax horn with the bell going over the shoulder. This has top action rotary valves. So if he were to go ahead and hold it up, you play with the fingers acting top on the valves, and the sound is going over the shoulder. So this again is the melody, and the E-flat voices were pretty much the highest ones. We're playing the melody almost all the time.
Thank you. Well, those of us who know Civil War music recognize Lorena, which is often thought of as a ballad.
Right.
This ballad has percussion, has a steady bass beat. Why is it done this way?
Well, it was written for military bands to bolster the troops and not let them be too sentimental about home. It's a sentimental song, but when you've got that steady beat to it and that up-tempo, very steady marching kind of cadence to it, it's not as sentimental, but it may be encouraging to the men to serve their fullest extent.
Great. Well, gentlemen, thank you for bringing the horns that you use to help portray history with. John, thank you for telling us the story. We're going to go out. We're going to say thank you very much for joining us at Civil War Digital Digest. We hope you found a small musical way to gain a connection to the brass bands of the Civil War, to music, to morale. We're going to leave you with Lorena. Hit like on that button, subscribe to the Digest, and take a look at what we're doing on Patreon. Members of the 73rd OVI will give you Lorena on the way out. Gentlemen.
Top, band, instruments, up, 1, 2, ready.